Hello, everybody. This is Rich Romersa, owner-operator, East Rosebud Fly Shop, and we're back for another podcast, an East Rosebud Studios podcast. And I'm joined by my wonderful, wonderful co-host, Brandon Booty.
What's up, everyone? What's up, everyone? How you guys doing? Thanks for listening.
Yeah, well, I got some good news and I got some bad news. Which one you want to hear first?
Let's hear the good news first.
The good news is, I feel this has been good enough to keep doing.
That's great news.
The bad news is that the Fly Fishing Podcast Nielsen ratings came in late last week, and we dropped from 10 viewers to 9. So we lost a viewer.
Lost a viewer.
Yeah.
That's all right. We'll gain him back.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, you think it was the, baby's arm with an apple at the end of it comment?
That could have been it.
That could have been it. So since we last met, I took a significant hosted East Rosebud trip with a great group to Cayo Cruz, Cuba. And I wanted to talk about this during the podcast because I cannot begin to describe how moved I was personally by going back to Cayo Cruz and spending that time with the same hotel, kitchen, wait staff, and the guiding apparatus, the 5 guides that guided our 5 skiffs. And for the folks out there that haven't taken a lot of guiding trips, or the folks out there that have never done a saltwater trip, I'm going to give you a lesson, because some guides are way better than others. It's just that simple. Just like some electricians are better than others, guides are the difference between great motivators and teachers in the sport and flat out fucking dickheads. And at Cayo Cruz, Cuba, these 5 gentlemen, these 5 guides that took care of my anglers during this week, I'm in love with these fuckers.
That's great. That sounds like...
I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. I've been around different kinds of folk growing up. I'm not a total square from Montana. And Cuban people, they have a much different take, in my opinion, than other places I travel. And I've been to South America, Mexico a lot, the Bahamas. I ain't been everywhere, but these people, because of the fucking dire economic situation in Cuba, capital D, capital I, capital R, capital E. Fucking dire. I've actually taken some casual heat as fly shop dude for facilitating business to Cuba. You post a few pictures and some keyboard warrior is, oh fuck, they just found out there's a Chinese spy satellite in Cuba since 2019, blah blah blah. And I'm sitting there going, what's that got to do with Rico, who serves me my pina colada at the bar, bitch?
Yeah, you have a point.
Well, I mean, it's you're a young man, so I'm beautifully mature. I'm older. I'm in the sweet spot, I think. Okay. And I grew up fucking hating Cuba. I mean, Cuba was a country that let the Russians, and I'm 58 years old. I hate Russians. I'm kidding. But the influence of communism off of our shore, 90 miles from Florida to Cuba, whatever, close. They put nuclear fucking warheads and pointed that shit at us back in the 60s when folks were losing sleep about nuclear war. Fucking young generation now, it's like, what's that? Is that on TikTok, bitch? But when I was a kid, I remember, and I'm being sincere here, I remember being scared about some fucker in Russia bombing my country. So that's all changed in the psyche of everybody now, but that's a big part of the Cuban dig, is that, and fair. I mean, Jane Fonda sat on a cannon, a North Vietnamese cannon during the Vietnam War, and she never really got her career back. So you point nuclear missiles at me, I don't care who you are, right? A lot of hatred towards Cuba for shit like that. Plus, when the revolution took over in the 50s or the 60s, and I'm no historian on Cuba here, they commandeered all that beautiful beachfront property because I think a lot of American mobsters ran Cuba. Cuba was this high-end gambling getaway with hot bitches and hot dice and hot cards and all that. And fuck. But what happens in Cuba stays in Cuba. Shit like that. And then Fidel took over, murderously so, and hasn't been the same since. So there's a lot of Americans that just, Cuba is this anti-American, communist, Russia sympathizing, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting there thinking about Rico at the bar. Because the staff at the Caia Cruz Hotel, which is where we stayed, I've never been surrounded by more intelligent, legit, stand-up folks that have nothing to do with the dynamics of American Cuba. So when you take a group to Cuba, there's a little bit of a stigma with it, and I'm just here to say that it's all bullshit. The folks in Cuba are financially desperate. The economy in Cuba is at an all-time fucking low. I literally got the pleasure of getting to know some people at this hotel that are sharp, superbly communicative, professional folks that are working full-time for this hotel, making $40 fucking a month.
That's insane.
Let that soak in. I mean, $40 a month. They're not begging, but you're in this environment. You're able to give somebody a $50 bill and change something for a week.
Yeah.
What could you do? What could you do in America to change somebody's week here?
I mean, with $50, nothing.
$50 is, let's face it, it's a couple of OnlyFans subscriptions. You know what I'm saying? maybe three, maybe four, depending on who it is. So, it's amazing to go to Cuba and go through this dynamic where I had a couple people in my group, one of them a very good friend of mine, a superb angler, a good friend. I'm going to drop his name. His name's Dave Best. And the reason I dropped his name is because I know Dave don't care. But Dave ended up being the fucking mayor of Caia Cruz. He speaks Spanish pretty good, and people naturally love him here in America. It's certainly East Rosebud. But Dave, these people just were magnetized to Dave. And it was only because Dave was good and generous. We were with another group, a group of older dudes. They weren't part of our group, but they were nice men. I mean, they really were. They were cool. They came there to fish. And I think their view on the staff and everything, and certainly in terms of the tipping and everything, was different. You'll get some Americans that'll go there and they're thinking, okay, this is third world shit. I can get away with a third worth of the tips. Fuck that. That's that. I'm telling you, it really was.
After you put down that dough, anyways, you know what I mean? Because it costs money to go there. Tip them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this trip was $3,800 plus another $400 for blah blah blah. You probably were into it for about $1,200-$1,300 for your flights round trip, and then. Fuck, if you didn't spend $1,000 there that week on tips, you're a tight little bitch.
Exactly.
That's, to me, that's just really the bottom line. So my point in this starting with these people, and I'm really talking right now about the staff at this hotel. This is how dire it is economically in Cuba, both in terms of pay as well as their ability to have things, get things, important things. Not a fucking Netflix subscription, not an iPhone 14, 13, whatever it is now. But if you could give a Cuban a fucking insulated water bottle, it was like giving them a $500 bill.
That's crazy.
I'm going to say that one more time. an insulated water bottle, high end $40, bottom end at Walmart $15. If you could hand that to a Cuban citizen, you fucking change their moment. That's how bad it is in Cuba. So I'm very proud to have gone there, fished there, and I'm going back to the same community next December. So I started with that because as I flew away from kayak cruise from the Camagüey airport, I ended up just really reflecting on the fact that I was really motivated and changed more by the guides and the people than I was the superb fishing opportunity. And it's kind of that way when you take these trips in a lot of instances, especially when you go the same place multiple times. It isn't anymore just some guide. It's the relationship building is immense. And when we were in Cuba, it took me over. And that's being straight with you, how tough it is for them and how they took care of my group. And we were able to stay in this luxury, non-luxury hotel. The hotel that we stay at is very modern, it's very clean, but it's got a setup where you're basically enjoying an hors d'oeuvre getting the fuck bit out of you by mosquitoes. It's like an open air setting that, like, if there's no wind or anything, you're going to get the shit picked out of you.
And is that just like the common areas?
Yeah, it is. Okay. Basically, you've got your rooms. My room was so nice. It was a shame I did not have a smoking hot woman that I know with me. Because we'd enjoyed that room. Sex shower.
Always better with some company.
Yeah, nice. Really, really, really a nice room. So, $4,000 airfare tips, and here I am talking about this nice room with world-class fucking bone fishing right out there. It's a great setup. So the people were the big thing. The guides made the week. There were too many skiffs on the water. Avalon advertises, I think, 8, and I think there was 11. Every skiff they had was full. And that's fine. You're not going to be at kayak cruise out there thinking there's a pressure with another boat. It's not quite like that. But a couple fewer skiffs is better. So when we go back this next December, we've got 5 skiffs reserved, so for 10 anglers. And this podcast is a bit of an advertisement because I want to fill this trip fast. This trip is for somebody that's an entry-level saltwater angler or somebody that's fancy would be permit and bonefish, and certainly there were plenty of tarpon here, but this is the trip. This is the trip. I'll get into the fishing part on part 2 here, but the people were it, and I was able to select the 5 guides that I fished with a year ago June, and all of you people that went on this trip with me, you can fucking thank me right now because I got the best 5 guides out of that mix and you all benefited from that. That's what you get if you go on a hosted trip with East Rosebud. How about that shit?
That's great. Yeah, they gotta thank you on that. A guide, the guides make a huge difference.
They don't know though. They don't know that, like, and this isn't bragging as much as just how much I take my job of hosting a trip seriously. I reached out a couple months before and reserved those dudes because a year ago June, it was the first trip I've ever gone on where you have a roster of guides and we switch guides primarily every day so everybody has the fair mix of guides. There's no fucking drop off in talent, attitude, or friendliness.
That's awesome. And there's probably a reason you got those guys you wanted to, they know you treat them good. And
well, that's a big part of it. But really, the reason I requested them is I knew they would get my clients and my friends on fish.
Yeah.
That's why I did it.
But from their end, they're like, oh, we know this group always treats us good. We're going to give them what they want. We're going to give them these 5 guides.
Listen, I got to close this out with it because I've been running these segments too long, and my producer, my Jesus, Lydia, that's heavy, but that's how strong she is in East Rosebud. She just does it all. She's the best. I've been running this shit too long, so I got to just quit yakking. But these guides, as I've developed these relationships with these men, and the way you can tip them every day if you want, and they get all that money. But at the end of the week, you have to tip them a certain amount, and that's per Avalon, and that might get spread out. I don't know how, what, why. I'm going to share something here before I'm done. When we exited Cuba, once you checked in with American Airlines at the airport at Camagüey, you went through a single box type hallway with, it looked like a fucking peep show. Looked like you walked in a room and the chick is on the other side of glass. It's just a weird apparatus in Cuba. There's a dude, military customs cat, sitting in there taking your picture just like when you come through U.S. Customs. And I got through just like that. Hat off, take your picture, gone. The next two dudes got shaken down for $100. The next two dudes, he held up their passport with a handwritten note with a piece of paper, $100. He did not do that to me. There were no conditional differences between me leaving and them leaving as far as paperwork, passport, or nothing, right? He held up that $100. The first guy, my friend, gave the motherfucker the $100. There's no fucking $100 bill to leave Cuba. You got to buy a $100 visa coming in, but there ain't no fucking. That's a shakedown. The next guy, who's a good friend of mine, who's a cheap tipper, he fucking said no, and the guy said, "Okay, through. You're through." So that's Cuba. Stay around for part 2. This is our first official East Rosebud Studios sponsor. If you don't fish sage fly rods, then fuck you.